Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Ali Farooq again, back with Fireside Chats, and today I have the one and only from Al-Mawrid, Dr. Khalid Zaheer. Dr. Saab, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
So since Dr. Saab is visiting Dallas, we thought this is the best opportunity to have a chat with him and cover different topics. He has been affiliated with Ustad Ghamidi for a while, and not only just because of that, he has been in the picture, in the limelight in Pakistan for many years across different televisions in Pakistan. So Khalid Saab, the first program we want to do with you, we would like to focus on you and yourself. Just want to know, how it all started and what's your background, where you're coming from, and how did your, in general, religious journey started for religious knowledge?
It all started in 1977 when I lost my father, and my perspective about life changed completely. I immediately resorted to reading the Quran. Wanted to know what the Quran is saying, and laid my hands on whatever information was available. But the first serious attempt at understanding Islam and the Quran was when I became a follower of Dr. Asrar Ahmad. I did his Ba'ah, Oath of Allegiance, as people formally do in religion, in Tasawwuf.
Yes.
And I stayed with him for a good 3 or 4 years, very close to him. And
78 to 82?
77 to 80.
Okay.
Yeah. During this while, during the later part of this period, I had the opportunity of meeting almost simultaneously both Javed Saab as well as Maulana Islahi. So I think it was probably in 1980 or 81 when I left Tanzeem Islami of Dr. Asrar, and I joined Ghamidi Saab as his student. While he himself was doing a lot of intensive research, but me along with a few other friends, we decided that we will try as best as we can to understand religion from him.
So you said you were close to Dr. Asrar. What does that mean?
What it means is that he had a very clear plan of trying to reform the society, which he mentioned as a revolutionary plan, wherein he would take his followers for following his path by asking them to do Ba'ath, and we would then go through the reading of the Quran. More particularly, there was a selected portion of the Quran which every member of the group would understand, and we would preach it and do these halaqas, these Dars-e-Quran groups. And obviously there were many other speeches that he would deliver. As a consequence, we wanted that this message of the Quran would spread across all throughout the Pakistani society, and there would be a large number of people who would start following it, and we'll bring about a revolution in the society.
So were you also involved deeply in the board or in Tanzeem Islami administration as well, or just as a student you're learning from Dr. Asrar?
There were two parts of his Tanzeem. There was another group which had more to do with administrative efforts. I was more involved in the Dawah effort, and that's what Dr. Saab wanted the young people who had become a part of his effort, his movement, to do. To understand the Quran, to preach the message as he was preaching, and I had very little to do with administration.
I see. So you said 77 is when you really started to branch out and understand. So before that, there was really no inclination toward religion in general, or was there a background before 77 as well?
Well, basically, I would say none whatsoever. But I think like every other youngster, I'm sure, all people living in Muslim societies who have gone through formal, what we call secular education, I also had ups and downs in my attachment to religion. So I do remember as a teenager, probably there was a duration of 2 or 3 years when I turned religious. But finally, I decided that I'm not interested in religion anymore until such time that I had this shock in my life, and I changed myself completely.
So there was a turning point, a life-changing event that basically led you towards. Right. So why Dr. Asrar?
Simply because it was by this stroke of luck, call it, that I was in the Punjab University. I was there to appear in the final exams of BCom. I'd started going to these Thursday evening programs of Tablighi Jamaat, and I used to do it in Sargodha where I was living, and then I moved to Lahore. I wanted to go to the same place in Lahore as well,
Yeah.
But I asked somebody for the manner I would be able to go to that place where the Tablighi Jamaat would have their Thursday weekly gatherings. And the gentleman that I met, he said that, okay, fine, I mean, I can let you know where to go, but why don't you go to this gentleman who is teaching the Quran? And, right from the beginning, I was more inclined towards understanding the Quran.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, why not? And I went to the dars of Dr. Asrar. He delivered it in Lahore, in Model Town, in his office. Well, the place where now they have this Quran Academy.
Yes.
And he was absolutely immensely impressive. The first dars that I attended, I decided that he's the man that I'm going to follow.
Yeah, Dr. Asrar will capture you in awe, right? Yeah. He was a great orator, a great presenter, had great historical knowledge as well. So he'll bring the entire picture together in a very unique way. So he's very inspirational. So that probably. So at what point, and knowing a lot of people who were actually influenced and impressed with Dr. Asrar, I know that it's a long journey, right? I mean, once you get in and you just go more deeper. So when you talk about a couple of years, it looks like very unique that within few years you kind of moved on.
I think if you were to spend time with Dr. Asrar as I did, it was complete, devotion to his task, his point of view. You would take as a youngster 2 to 2.5 years to know everything that he had to say. Full marks to him for whatever he was doing. He was an exceptionally devoted teacher, preacher, attached to his point of view. But the kind of presentation that he was making, it would take 2 to 2.5 years for you to be able to completely understand and even memorize what he was saying. After 2 to 2.5 years or 3 years, I realized that he's brilliant. And I also realized that he has brought about a tremendous change in my life as well as in the lives of many other youngsters.
Yeah.
But I was absolutely clear that what he was doing as yet was a one-man show. And I wanted other important people to also become a part of that movement.
Yeah.
And that is what took me to Ghamidi Sahab as well as a few other people. And I went to them and asked them, why is it not that they're joining Dr. Asrar Ahmed?
Yeah. So I understand. So, I mean, a lot of times in my experience as well, I've seen a very one-sided approach where maybe you're not allowed to ask as many questions that openly, at least in public forums. And there's one direction preaching that takes place. Even though, I mean, I have listened to a lot of Dr. Asrar speeches and some of them have been really great, maybe very opinionated in my mind at times. But so let's move on to Ghamidi Sahab. So how did you first meet him? And in this program, I want to focus on your journey. So Ghamidi Sahab will obviously do another program as well, but your experience and how it actually now for last 30, 40 years you have been associated. So what brought you there?
My first introduction of Ghamidi Sahab was not a very positive one because the manner that I learned about him was through Dr. Asrar. And Dr. Asrar Ahmed, let's face it, was not very fond of Ghamidi Sahab. He did have respect for his knowledge.
They've worked together under Dr. Maududi for some time.
Not together. I mean, when Ghamidi Sahab joined Maulana Maududi, Dr. Asrar had already left him. Dr. Asrar left Maulana Maududi in 1958.
1958.
And he joined him in, let's say, late 60s.
Late 60s, and he left Maududi Sahab around 73 time frame.
So they had the occasion of learning from Maulana Maududi, but their time periods were different. So the introduction that I had was not exactly very positive. I'm not saying that it was very strongly negative, but then I got the opportunity of listening to his Dars-e-Quran, which, to be honest, to begin with, was not quite impressive to me as I used to be impressed by Dr. Asrar. But then it so happened that I got the opportunity to read one of his books. He didn't write any books at that point in time, but somehow there was an occasion that necessitated that he should write a book.
Yeah.
And my goodness, I was very impressed. And
Which book was that, if you don't mind
it
sharing?
was Islam ka Siyasi Nizam, the political system of Islam.
Yeah.
This is something, and I'm talking about 1980 or 81. And I read that book and I said that this is immensely deep, and I wanted to meet this
That's
man.
a breakthrough, actually. It's a reconstructive thought, about Islam, which very few people have actually brought forward with that courage and with that knowledge and that deep, actually.
True.
Yeah.
So I asked my friend who had given me the book to let me have the opportunity of meeting Ghamidi Saab. And as they say that, once you go to meet Ghamidi Saab and you have an open mind, you are gone. I mean, there's no way that he's not going to impress you.
Yeah.
And it was then thereafter meetings after meetings after meetings. And I was completely bought.
I see. So let's just try to move on and try to come to this point as of today. So in those last 30, 40 years, you probably took some time to learn, and then you started presenting and taking the message back. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
You see, the tone was already set by Dr. Asrar.
Yeah.
I had this second nature in me now, that the message that I would learn, message of Islam, I would teach, I would preach, I would take it to wherever I can. So I started learning from Ghamidi Saab. It was a different process altogether. I do remember we used to urge him to do something practical to influence the society, but he would tell us that he was doing research. He was himself understanding what Islam is.
Yes.
So most certainly he did a lot of practical work with us in the 80s, and we would learn. There was a 2 years intensive program of Islamic learning that we did in Al-Mawrid. We started Al-Mawrid in 1983.
Yeah.
And then we started efforts in the field of political reform.
Yeah.
We traveled. There were gatherings that took place. We were joined by lots of traditional ulama. In that effort. So we started doing all these things, but I think at some stage probably he realized that it's more focused understanding of Islam on his part and on the part of his students that is needed for reforming the society properly, or for reforming the process of learning Islam more effectively. I, by the way, had joined Punjab University's Business Administration Department, by virtue of which I was given the opportunity of doing my PhD. And I left Ghamidi Saab in 1990 and came back in 1994. And by the way, he was not particularly excited about the idea, because at that time he thought that it probably is not the right approach. It's not allowed for Muslims to go abroad. But probably for
that
education.
That was his thought in 80s.
In 1980s.
He was really,
he was very firm about it.
Which is absolutely a changed paradigm now.
That's right.
So you went to, if I remember, Manchester?
I went to the University of Wales.
Wales, okay.
A small university town in Wales called Lampeter, where I went.
So this in itself is very unique, right? Someone studying religious education goes for an MBA.
Well, actually, when I turned towards religion, I was already in the second year of BCom.
I see.
And the next in line natural way for me to proceed was to do MBA. Dr. Asrar Ahmed did want me to do something different. He wanted me to do Islamic law, which had already only recently it was started in the International Islamic University. Yeah. But my mother was absolutely clear that there was no way that I'm going to do anything other than MBA.
So you came back in 94 and Ustad Ghamidi Saab, what did your perspective change about?
It changed in so many ways that honestly it took me a couple of years for me to settle down mentally. Because these 4 years were the years when he had kind of transformed intellectually in his religious perspective. He had done his research, and his understanding had brought him to a completely new world.
Was it evolution because he was always trying to evolve and that's why it happened, or was it really a different shift in understanding the way he would apply to understand religion?
Actually, it was both. If you know Ghamidi Saab well, you would know that he is a man who would never ever be stubborn about anything. He would look at what the arguments are about a certain
Yeah.
problem issue. And if the argument is going to take him to a position which is absolutely the opposite of what he was holding, he would have no hesitation.
Yeah, this is how you...
Because I did not travel with him intellectually in those 4 years. When I returned to Pakistan and saw that he had completely the opposite perspectives in quite a few things that we used to be believing in and following earlier on, I was shocked, and it took me a few years for me to come back.
We need to dive into those few four things in the next program, hopefully. So 94 you come back, and then you have this journey, and I mean, I know in 2006, 2005 time frame, Al-Mawrid becomes more prominent. It starts coming into mainstream Pakistani media as well. I know you actively participated there as well. And before that, if I remember correctly, you were in LUMS, and so you were doing, you were a teacher, a professor, and you had multiple different universities you worked on. So tell us a little bit about your career outside of Al-Mawrid, and then how you came back and how you started coming into the mainstream media.
I joined the Punjab University practically in 1984, and the idea was not to teach business administration. That was never my passion. I wanted to teach religion, but I didn't know the path. So I started teaching business administration as well as teaching Islam once a week. There used to be a weekly class of Islamic orientation that I would offer to the students. Yes. Obviously, it was always voluntary as far as participation was concerned. When I returned from UK with a PhD, not long afterwards, I was offered to teach in LUMS, Lahore University of Management Sciences. So I taught the MBA program, a course, the title Islamic Ethics in Business. And then they started this BSc program, I think in 1996.
Yeah.
And I taught Islamic Studies. And then I got into LUMS as a member of their formal team, permanent faculty in 1998. And I stayed there until 2006.
So at LUMS, because most of the cream of Pakistan comes, did they know about your religious affiliation, and was it something that was acceptable to those youngsters at that time?
I think there was a good thing about LUMS and a not so good thing about it. The good thing about LUMS was that I went to LUMS as somebody who was there to teach religion, Islam.
Yeah.
So there was no confusion about me as against my position in Punjab University, where I was supposedly teaching business administration.
Yeah.
The not so good thing from my perspective was that I thought of myself as someone who was a traditional, conventional religious person. And LUMS was, relatively speaking, a free university with a free atmosphere, open Western atmosphere. So I didn't used to feel very comfortable. But then I thought that if I was to do something worthwhile in this society, these are the people, these are the youngsters that I have to address. So I think it was a very good breakthrough that I got at that time for me to be able to introduce the understanding of Islam that I had learned from Ghamidi Sahab and Dr Zaheer and Maulana Islahi, which is exactly what I did.
I see. So let's just understand a bit more about your experience with Pakistani media, and you have been in mainstream. You've had multiple programs for yourself. So how's that been? And is this something you'll continue doing? Is this something that you think has given and taken the message forward as you probably wanted it to?
It was all accidental, to begin with. In 2006, I was asked to do a live program, daily live program in Ramadan, and I have all along been a very nervous person. I thought it was Aaj News.
Okay.
I thought I would never be able to do it. A live program where people are going to ask me questions, and I didn't think that I was confident enough to be able to do it. But then, Alhamdulillah, the Almighty helped, and it was a reasonably good program that I did in 2006, 2007, 2008. I think at that time there were many people across the country who were looking for reasonable answers to the questions, religious questions that were bothering them. And obviously the main task was being done by Ghamidi Sahab. But because my probably language was simpler, comparatively speaking, there were many people who thought that they understood me better.
Yeah, I got it. So yeah, that's a great experience. And I know you were involved in the media recently as well, and now you're exploring a few things outside of Pakistan as well. But the whole purpose of this program was to just give a brief intro to the audience about students of Javed Ahmed Ghani Sahab who have been pretty successful in the mainstream. And we'll do more episodes, more focus on Al-Mawrid and Ustad Ghamidi Sahab and some of the topics that probably are very prominent that we can talk about with Khalid Sahab while he's here in Dallas. Thank you so much, Khalid Sahab.
Okay.
I will talk to you in the next program. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.